Really great to have you.
Thank you. Glad that my demographic is male.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions that might sort of spice this room up, but yeah. Not like that. Firstly, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Alex was meant to come earlier this term, and we managed to sort of rejiggle it and get you in just before term finishes, and clearly a lot of people have managed to turn out for it, so it's great to have you.
Thank you, by the way.
I wanted just to start with sort of your early influences and sort of what led you to become an actor. And sort of like, for me, it seemed like I could identify sort of two reasons you might have gone into acting. One, because your father was an actor, and the second because from quite an early age you got into modelling, which is sort of more broadly show business, and that might have been a bit of a stepping stone. Can you sort of elaborate on whether it was one of those reasons that led you into acting, or whether it was something else?
For me, my parents, my mum and my stepdad, who brought me up from around 6 months old, my stepdad was a builder, and my mum had been an actress in her earlier life with my real father. And so my mum always encouraged the arts, and my stepdad always encouraged football, motor racing, and I actually wanted to be a Formula One driver, funny enough. And I had gone down to, there's a place called Sandown Racetrack in Isha, and I had always spent all my time there racing, and my mum, I guess, always made sure that we would do all these activities, and so she joined me up to this small kind of boutique agency when I was a young kid, and the first audition I ever went for was for Tom Brown's School Days, and I got the opportunity to be a part of that. And so, but I never really intended to be an actor until I got to I guess 18 or 19, where I can give you the life story of how I got to that point of when I went to America. I left England and I went to America, and I got the movie Beastly and I Am Number 4. I got them back to back, and I kind of was like, I guess this is my career, which was weird because as a youth I had so many events happen and so many opportunities happen as a young man that I always took for granted, and I always thought that this is not reality, this isn't real. There's no way that I'm sitting in a room with Mickey Rourke or Bill Nye or Andy Serkis and this is going to last forever. So I kind of, my attitude towards it was always temporary, you know. Which I guess my earlier life was always like that in my personal life. You know, the people that were always surrounding me was always temporary. So I guess I kind of took that, and then, you know, anyway.
Well, just picking up on just what you said there, sort of a lot of people surrounding you when you're younger were sort of temporary. Has that had any sort of effect in how you are as a person now?
Yeah, it definitely affected me now. But as a young boy, you know, I left school at 15. Don't leave school. But I left school at 15, and I had a very tumultuous relationship with myself and with other people as a young boy, and kind of was on my own from the age of 15 till, you know, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, which really fed into my life and into my career and into the things that I did. And I think that we all go through a journey that has experiences that help us either grow or digress, you know, and I definitely took all the experiences in my lifetime from a personal and professional standpoint and used that experience, either if those experiences were negative, and always tried to change them into a positive and grow as a human being. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you were saying in your mind that those sort of early acting jobs, they were sort of temporary and perhaps something that wouldn't be your career for life, but
yeah.
What was really more solid during your youth was actually your modelling career. Did you ever think that would be the one that you would just stick to, and that acting was sort of be a side thing?
Actually, you know, that's funny, Wikipedia is quite an interesting non-factual fact. I actually only did modelling because I was an actor.
Okay.
So I did the Burberry campaigns because, well, I had no money and I got offered to do them, and they only came from stemming from doing like Tom Brown School Days and
so
Wild
Burberry was
Child.
just after Tom Brown's.
Well, Burberry actually was when I was around 17 or 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. After beginning as a very young actor, do you, now that you're much older, feel that you need to rebrand yourself? Because I think a lot of people who sort of watched Stormbreaker, for example, in the early days might still see you and categorize you as sort of that person. And have you been conscious of that and actually sought out to sort of change and rebrand yourself, or not?
I was very lucky, or unlucky in some ways, where I got to a point in my career where no one wanted to work with me because I was a pain in the ass. And so I didn't really have the choice of rebranding myself. I just had a choice of like, I got to about 21, 22 years of age after I did Magic Mike. And all the things that I had had in my life that were personal to me, that had been defaults in working with people, collaboration, had affected my career, where I got to a standpoint where, it was difficult for me to carry on in our business because of the people that I was working with just didn't want to work with me. And a lot of my own issues was that was a lot of to do with me, and also a lot to do with that my industry is just not political at all in any sense. The politics that happen inside Hollywood are a niche of their own. I think you're witness to that with everything that's going on in the moment in the press, and so I just wasn't accustomed to dealing with a certain kind of people. I come from like a very real background of like, I come from I came from a very nice upbringing up to I was about 13, and then a not so nice upbringing after that. And so the reality of me dealing with people was on a very real level. And I learnt to manipulate that and grow and be more political in the way that I dealt in my business. So after Magic Mike, I kind of disappeared out of the limelight a little bit, just due to circumstances, and I didn't know if I actually really wanted to carry on in our industry, but I had no qualifications, and I just didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was fortunate enough to find other activities in my life that created a source of revenue, and I think that it's not so much about rebranding yourself, but really reimagining what you want in life and who you are. I admire the people like, I don't know if you know who Conor McGregor is, but 90% of the world do. But he talks about reading The Secret, and he was a plumber, and he said, I'm going to be the biggest fighter in the world, and blah, blah, blah. And so I didn't really have a choice of like, that's what I wanted to do. I just stepped away and I thought, what are the things that inspire me and creatively, inspire me? And all the films that I had loved as a kid, from Fellini to Soderbergh, who I'd managed to work with, to a lot of European filmmakers, to the European films that I loved, from A Prophet and La Passine, and these great films that like Alain Delon and X, Y, and Z had been a part of. I was like, I really want to be taken seriously as an artist, and I've never been taken seriously as an artist. I've always been put into a category of being a handsome leading man in movies that not necessarily inspired me. But I took that on a negative as a young boy, and I tried to fight it, and I forgot that the most important thing in my industry is to entertain people, and a lot of people enjoyed those movies, not necessarily me being a part of them, but a lot of people, it gave, enjoyment to people, and I think that that's where I was going wrong in my life. And so stepping back, I thought, what do I want to do? And I said, I really want to have control in the things that I'm a part of. I really want to rebuild and redirect myself in the art form that I do. And I also want to get involved in business. I really love the business aspect of our industry. And so I took time out, and I came back and I started a company, and I started that company, and I got the rights to this book called Griselda Blanca, called The Godmother. And I kind of came back to America and kind of was like, I think when, we've all had this in our lives, when you feel people are saying things behind your back, or you have like an insecurity, you feel like you're walking on eggshells, and I felt like I was coming back and walking on eggshells. And I sat like the first 4 days at this event in Los Angeles, which is called AMFAR, a very good charity organization. And I sat next to Jennifer Lopez, and she started to talk to me, and I was talking to her, and she said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I just, optioned the rights to this book called The Godmother, and I would, I'd love to talk to you about it." And she's like, "Okay." And so she gave me her number, and then I was like, "Okay." And then 2 weeks later, I realized I was sitting down having lunch with her, talking about this book, and I realized, like, here's a woman who's so successful, so inspirational, so powerful, and she doesn't have anything but a nice bone in her body, And you don't need to be a certain kind of dogmatic person, you don't have to be this, I guess I had always put on this rhino skin, this kind of like energy of an alpha male, because I had been brought up in a certain way that had led me into this position of just being just not a very nice man. And I realized, like, at that point, that was 3 years ago, that, like, I genuinely am just a real lover. Like, I really love life. I never get depressed. I'm like a really happy-go-lucky man. And it was inspirational for me to partner up with her, and she partnered up with me on it. And we sold the show, or we sold the movie to HBO. And I became an executive producer on it, and we got Terence Winter to write the script, who is done Wolf of Wall Street. He wrote The Sopranos, just an amazing writer. And that really gave me my confidence to then move forward as an artist. And so I was thinking about the things that I wanted to do next. I went and did a little independent movie called Strange Ones, which was about two supposedly brothers that go on a road trip, but as you follow the story, you realize that the situation between both these kids are not as it seems, and the older brother is actually sexually inclined towards the younger brother. And it was a very dark movie and a real risk for me to take, because I had never done an independent movie like that. And but I really enjoyed that process of making films again. And it kind of reminded me of Magic Mike. Magic Mike obviously became its own different animal, but when we started Magic Mike, it was a small $6 million movie that Steven Soderbergh and Channing put their own money into, and it was an independent film. It was the first independent film that I had done. But obviously, because Channing is an amazing businessman, and so is Steven Soderbergh, they sold it to Warner Brothers, and it became what it is, and made like 300 million around the world. So, but this was obviously not like that, because it didn't have men in thongs. so we weren't making 300 million around the world. So I did that, and I really artistically fell in love with what I did again, and so then after that, I always secretly, apart from wanting to be a Formula One racing driver, always loved film and always wanted to be a director, always. And I think for me, I thought that was a path that I would take much later in life, but I found this script that I had been given 10 years ago called Backroads, and I went to the producer that held the script, that owned the rights, and I said that I would love to produce. I had just done the Jennifer Lopez that I sold to HBO, which gave me a little bit of credit, and I said I would love to produce this, and he said sure, and he said, would you like to be in it? And I said sure, and but I think the way that he was saying it was that in our industry, a lot of projects get stuck into kind of a lull where they make money on projects by them not going because of rights, people paying for rights, and then if they pay for rights, they take a salary out of those rights. And so you kind of build debt onto a project, and so a lot of producers don't care if things go or not. And so, but I'm quite, as I've explained, quite headstrong. When I want to do something, I put my full energy into it. And so I said, yeah, I would love to be a part of the project, and I would love to do the movie. And so I stepped on as a producer and stepped on as an actor, and I went out to directors. And for the first time, on top of just having an amazing experience with Jennifer Lopez, but this was the first time that I saw my industry from a completely different angle, from a produceral point of view, from a business point of view. I'd always done business outside of my business, but to deal with the politics that were inside my business, I was now dealing with firsthand. I had a very well-known director called Lee Daniels, who I'd worked with on The Butler, come onto the project, and we raised money off of him, and we did this SCIS scheme, which is you raise tax money out of the UK, and then we were raising money independently with me and him doing the movie together. And then he phoned me very respectfully and said he couldn't do the movie, and said he had a first look deal with the Weinstein Company, and that he had signed a contract saying that any movie he had done after The Butler, he had to do a movie for them. So he fell out. And so I was left with money that I had raised primarily off of him, and I was pretty fucked in like the nicest sense of the word, because I was trying to prove, mostly primarily to myself, that I could do something that was really out of depth for me, but also it was like an adventure, something different. And you know, we all have lovers and haters in our corners, and it wasn't that I was trying to prove people who wanted to see me fail. I wanted to prove to myself, you know. And so then I went to another director, who will remain nameless, and they came up with a pitch that was so left field of what the actual film was. But meanwhile they were doing that, I went and rewrote the script and put forward a presentation for me to direct the film. And I phoned the investors and I said, if I was to direct the film, would you ever finance? And if you financed, what would you finance at? Now, I raised the money for Lee Daniels, which was a small budget for him of 15 million. And they told me that I would only have 2.5 to 3 million to do the movie, which, to understand the terminology of what that is, for him to do the movie for 15 million, you get like 37 days, which is good, a good time to make the film in, to actually film the film. But with 2.5 to 3 million, you get 17 days. And I was making a 129-page script. And so it's like probably near to impossible to make the movie. And so I rewrote the script so it came down to like 105 pages, but I still needed like around 23, 24 days, which I managed to have an amazing producer that helped me with that, and we got that done. And so the other director put his thing forward and I put my thing forward, and we all collectively said, well, this is a great opportunity for you, Alex, and why don't you go ahead? And I went ahead and I directed the movie this year, which I'm so proud of, and was an amazing, humbling experience. I got a great cast. I got Juliette Lewis, you know, she's an Oscar-nominated actress, and I got Jennifer Morrison, who was from House, and just amazing people. And to see my industry from a completely different side, that was also a learning experience and a growth for me as an individual, but also as someone who had taken for granted all the things that he had had in the past, you know, and so, yeah.
So having seen this other side, are you now sort of, is that what you prefer, this sort of production, is directing all that it lived up to be in sort of your as you said, you kind of aspired to be a director for quite a while. Did it live up to be everything you wanted? Is it something now that actually you prefer to be on this side of the fence rather than necessarily the acting side?
I prefer the experience because it's given me a different viewership on my industry as a whole. And so like, it's not that I prefer to be one side or prefer to be the other. I just like making art, you know? And I think that, you know, for the first time I feel like I'm slowly starting to go towards a direction of things that, you know, that interest me. Because at the end of the day, all the things that we do, we can only do if we love them, you know? And if we're not doing something that we don't love, then you're put into a position where you don't want to do it. Like, at school I had no interest in math or science, or I had interest of being on a racetrack going 100 miles an hour, and so my attention span wasn't there. But if I was told that I could go do that after school every day, and as long as I worked, I would go back to school and I would work my arse off. But I think the thing for us is that we have to be inspired by what we're doing, and I think for many years I was always doing something for someone else, and for the first time in my life, for the last 3 or 2.5 years, I'm really doing something not only for me, but it's from my heart, and maybe people might not like it, but it inspires me, and I think that's what's important, to give your heart in a creative sense for people to see.
I'm kind of glad that this sort of side to you has come out, because I was doing some sort of research, and like one of the things I always do before an interview is sort of look through other interviews that the speaker's been in, and it always seems like you did play into sort of what was expected, and so in terms of, I know you said at the very start sort of that alpha maleness, and the interviewers actively encouraged it as well, sort of the silliness of sort of, if you were doing sort of some sort of publicity for Wild Child, for example, you would play into the silliness of sort of the nature of the sort of rom-com of the film. And sort of, even when I was just on the phone to you before, I immediately was like, oh, okay, this sounds like someone who is not what you see on that sort of publicity of the camera.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised though to hear that that's only been in the last sort of 2 or 3 years that you've sort of managed to sort of escape that bubble in terms of
personally.
Personally, okay.
I mean, from a professional standpoint, I was really lucky to slowly work with good directors, like doing The Butler, but I was in the movie for 3 minutes, Yeah. But just to work with Lee Daniels was a privilege, And all my friends, it's a hard journey as a creative to step forward, and from going from doing $100 million movies and being that person to then stepping back from that. I always get my friends taking the piss out of me, saying, "Oh yeah, you're a failed actor," which in some ways, yes, I'm not that person, because I don't want to be that person. I want to be this person, and so I stepped back from those movies, and I went and did The Butler, and went and became the bad guy in time, and you have to, sometimes when you climb the mountain and you get near to the top, and you could carry on that journey, but that's not the journey you want to go on. You want to go on this journey. You have to come all the way back down to the bottom and be grounded, and then go back up. And the journey of that is life. That's life. You will always have ups, and you will always have downs. And on the downs, that's when you're really tested as the person that you are. Because to go back down to the bottom and rebuild and resurface and go forward, with integrity and with love and inspiration on things that you want to do, of course you're going to be knocked for that. Look at the greatest minds in the world. Look how many people failed. Look at Ford. Look at all these guys. Look at Elon Musk.
So, no disrespect to your friends, but surely you would have expressed these sorts of
they're just friends.
But surely if you
these are the guys that I'm in an airport and they'll debag me in front of everyone. So I'm not taking things too seriously. But
you never have sit down with your friends and have a serious conversation where you express those sentiments of sort of like, oh, actually, I'm doing X, Y, and Z movie, which is a great movie I'm starring in, but it's sort of perpetuating this sort of stereotype I have. And they're like, well,
honestly,
Alex,
honestly, they really don't care two shits what I'm doing. They really don't care. I'm just about to go do like a small, it's like a one-off episode on Some Like It. It's based off this Some Like It Hot, which is a Marilyn Monroe film, and I'm going to play Tony Curtis, and Marilyn Monroe is going to be played by Gemma Arterton, and it's like a really cool little piece of material. And I was telling my brother, I was like, oh, I'm going to play Tony Curtis. I'm trying to get the voice. And he's like, don't care. Have no interest. So it's nice. It's grounding. It's like,
I don't know. I don't know. It sounds like your friends could be a little bit more encouraging. Sort of like,
maybe I got the wrong friend.
I'm not going to say. So you're at this sort of stage in life now where you've had 2 or 3 years and you've sort of seen the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
And you have sort of this publishing company that you've set up. Do you want to actually explain a little bit more about not just sort of like the Jennifer Lopez book, but sort of like step back and how about the company as a whole and how you set that up and where that you want that to lead?
Yeah, I think the company that I set up and the publishing company was to help artists not being given the opportunity that they deserved, like unknown authors, and supplying in our world now with millennials using social media as platforms to promote. You know, the advertisement world has changed completely, and so from an individual standpoint, from creative or business, you can really build platforms as long as you have the gathering. I mean, all you need to do is watch the movie Social Network and you'll see and understand what Mark did and all these guys did, is if you can connect people and you have something worth of value that connects people through that, then success is equal, you know. And so I try to use my social platform to help artists, authors, to have a leverage to then promote whatever creativity they had. And I think that was what is important. And I think if there was a diamond in the rough and a gem from that, then I would take that book and I would change it into a piece of material like a TV show or a film. And we also find, as our company from a production standpoint, like Backroads is based off a New York Times bestseller, and Adrian Lyne wrote the script. He did 9.5 Weeks and Fatal Attraction and these amazing 90s films. He's an incredible director who was actually originally going to direct the film, but just through the economy and times changing, I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to do his job. So, but yeah, that's what the company does, is try and help people and give them a platform.
Mm-hmm. You highlighted quite a few sort of directors and producers who you've worked with.
Yeah.
Are there any who has stood out as sort of the one that you've learned the most from? And I think someone's just immediately come to mind.
No. Yeah.
Or is this a question you get asked a lot?
No, it's not. I don't really talk that much. If you have seen my interviews, I normally keep quiet, and this has been a while since I've actually talked. And I think from a personal standpoint and from my mentality, I have nothing. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I say it as it is now, which I kind of did in the past, but I say it more politely. But who are the people that have produced that have inspired me? I've worked with Steven Spielberg and Michael Bay. I worked with them. They were the producers on I Am Number 4. And when I was being a little shitbag, they both called me up and really gave me a good telling off. And I look back at that, and after doing Backroads, I can really understand where they're coming from. From a business standpoint, I really enjoyed working with Steven Soderbergh. I really loved working with Channing. Channing and Steven, what they put together and how they made Magic Mike breathe the air that it breathed with its success was phenomenal to watch. You know, the way that there was a New York Times article on independent film, and they used Magic Mike as the reference, even though Magic Mike looks and feels and has become this commerciality. It really, as I said, it really wasn't that, you know. It was two men sitting down, Channing and Steven, and talking about Channing's past and the life that he led and grew up, and having Steven Soderbergh, who is an amazing director who did Sex, Lies and Videotapes and all the Ocean's movies and Erin Brockovich, and saying, I can see something here that really will translate into the screen, and it did. So it was inspirational to watch how they did business, because none of us got paid on Magic Mike. We were all paid a very minimal sum, but we all took this back end of what the movie was. And I don't know if you watch Paranormal Activity or The Saws or any of these, but this is done by an independent producer called Jason Blum. And Jason Blum has the same model as Magic Mike, and he doesn't make a movie over $5 million. So every movie that you watch from The Purge, all those movies are made for a set sum, and the actors take a back-end percentage of the movie, and the success of the movie is led to the success of the movie. And if it's successful, you make a lot of money, and if you don't, you don't. And I think that model in independent film really works. And so, I learned a lot from those three people.
So if you're following that sort of model as an actor, are you then, how much does that incentivize you a lot to sort of like make sure that you get it on perfect, just so the movie is as successful as possible? You
can't ever tell if a movie is going to be perfect or if it's going to be good. It's like you and me can go to a gallery and look at a picture, and I'm inspired and I look at the picture and I feel emotional towards it, and you look at it and go and walk on. It's like everyone's taste is different, and so all you can do is be inspired about the work that you're doing and be a part of those things. And 9 times out of 10, if you're all on the same page, something magical does happen. But it's a Monte Carlo scheme. You never know if something's going to work or not.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If you don't mind, I think now would be a good time to open up to the audience for questions. Sure. So if you have a question, raise your hand nice and high and wait for a microphone to come to you. Yeah, let's start with the red arm in the back.
Firstly, I just want to say thank you so much for coming tonight. It's been really amazing just to hear you talk. I was just wondering, apart from the race car driving, is there anything that you particularly like doing as a hobby, or something that you might, if you'd never become an actor, that you might have maybe wanted to do instead?
Instead of racing or acting?
Yeah, instead of those.
Mere model. No, I'm joking. I don't know. I know this sounds crazy to say now, but I know this is insane. I really would have loved to finish school. I feel like I missed out on a huge chunk of my childhood. And I think there's something quite amazing about the community of being at school and university and the growth of learning. I think that today, as a 27-year-old man, I go back and I'm reading history books and I'm reading things that culturally has inspired film and television and the arts. And I think that even though we're sitting there sometimes thinking, what are we doing in school? I know that I felt this. What am I doing in school that is progressing me as a person? But I think the progression is the learning, and I feel like I missed out on that. So I definitely know that a lot of actors like Natalie Portman and people like that went back to Harvard and actually got a degree. So I feel like...
So Harvard's next then?
No. I'll be going to Oxford Brookes. No offence, but I'm definitely going to get in trouble for that one.
In general, because like there are so many. Have you ever spoken to other actors who have gone through that experience of sort of like having left school at 15 or trying to balance school and their career, and sort of like because there must be a community that is there of people who know what it's like to have left school early and perhaps had that regret or thought, what if I had finished?
A lot of actors who are child actors, or a lot of actors that are young in the industry, actually it's mandatory that they have an on-set tutor. And it was mandatory that I had an on-set tutor. I just used to tell him to, So a lot of actors finish their education. It's just my mentality wasn't there at the time. So that's something that I would love to have done.
And was that just because you thought the qualifications weren't important, or like where did that?
I honestly don't know what I was thinking at that point in my life. All I knew is I was running around doing Stormbreaker, like riding on quad bikes down like runways at 60 miles an hour, and I was thinking, why do I need to be learning about Napoleon? So which now actually I'm reading about, so it's quite interesting how things come full circle.
Yeah. I think that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Great, thanks for that question. Yeah, let's come down to the front here.
I can hear you, don't worry, mate.
We need it for the recording.
Ah, right.
So you were saying about how you wear your heart on your sleeve and you're quite honest. So I was wondering, when do you think that, when did you realise that you were so attractive? Because like, so, and this is a serious question because like you were modelling, you were doing a film where you were stripping, and like as great as I'm sure your personality is, you probably realised that it wasn't for that reason. So I wonder, how do you feel about yourself? How do you like?
He definitely should have been going to Oxford Brookes. I just explained how I felt for the last 40 minutes. Is that like growth as a human being and growth as an individual and physicality, that's not the importance of who we are. The importance is our journey and who we are and who define us. I mean, you can sit at a dinner and the most beautiful woman or beautiful man is sitting in front of you, and someone who necessarily you weren't initially attracted to was in front of you, and by the end of the dinner, the person that is to the right that obviously didn't initially attract you at first is more beautiful to you than the one that is to the left that is the most physically beautiful. And I think that like that's just on energy and connection. And I think for me, like whatever physicality you're talking about, as a young man, I had an ugliness and an insecurity to my journey, and I think that that was because people would always subject me to a certain physicality, and I always wanted to fight that, you know. Yeah. So.
That's a very good answer. Thank you.
Yeah. Good question.
Great. Yeah, let's go to you. Yeah, you. Just wait for the microphone.
Thank you. Hiya. I was just wondering, in the films that you've acted in, which ones are you most and least proud of?
Most, and I won't say the things that I'm least proud of because that's unfortunate to the people that worked on the movies. 3 years ago I would have told you, but not today. But
not necessarily, because it could be like for quite a good reason, just because it led to something or made you into the person that you didn't want to be.
Good journalist. Yeah. Fishing.
It's not necessarily.
Fishing.
It's not necessarily an attack of those who you've worked with, but necessarily like in terms of your like personal progression or anything like that.
But you have to understand is when you make a movie, 300 people are making a movie, and it doesn't matter who's on the movie. Every person has a creative input into that film. From the grips, to the costume, to the makeup, to the ADs, who are the assistant directors that run around and get you coffee, and everyone has their emotional, creative input into a film, and to discredit a film discredits 300 people, you know? And whatever my personal experience to that is for me. But I'll tell you the things that I have enjoyed and loved doing. I really loved and enjoyed doing I Am Number 4, just from like being a 19-year-old kid running around. There's an amazing story. Is like I'm standing on a football field in Pennsylvania, and the director comes up to me, and this is kind of like the first real big movie that I'm doing, and Steven Spielberg is there, he's on set, he's over there, and Michael Bay, they come for one day, and the camera's in front of me, and it's on like a quad bike, and the cameraman's behind, and he says, okay, so you're gonna run down the football field, and aliens are gonna come from left and right, and you've got the lights in your hands, and you're gonna kill them. I said, okay, so they go 3, 2, 1, action, and I'm running, and I'm like this. And I start, and all of a sudden I hear, cut. I was like, what's up? And they go, Alex, yeah? When you're running, you don't have to go pew, 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 like that. We have the sound effects in post-production. So, that just shows you the mentality of like being an actor. You're just a kid in like the back of your garden fighting off bad guys. But that, and I really, however uncomfortable it was for me to be in a thong, I enjoyed being a part of Magic Mike. I enjoyed because I had so much respect for Steven Soderbergh, the director. He was a real incredible influence on me as a young man, as an actor and as an inspiring director, and to watch his films and then be a part of that and work. I'm doing research at the moment on Tony Curtis because that's the thing I'll do next. And Tony Curtis was an amazing actor, and he talks about being inspired by Cary Grant. And he got the opportunity to work with Cary Grant. And, you know, I think a lot of those things sometimes don't really live up to expectation. And he talks about it living even more than what he expected. And I think for me, working with Steven Soderbergh was even more inspiring when I was actually on set with him, watching him work. And I had like a real love for that man, you know, and also because it was like a definitive point and changing in my life of like being this kind of action hero going pew, pew, pew to even though I was in a thong, but like I was in a movie about drug addiction and about people inspiring to be entrepreneurial, but really delusional about what they're doing in their own life because they think that they're going to be something that they're not, and they're always going to be set into a certain lifestyle, and they can never escape that. And if you watch Magic Mike and you watch a movie with Robert De Niro and I've actually gone mind blank, but it's very similar to this old movie, and I'll come back to it when I remember it, but it has really serious themes through Magic Mike. A lot of people miss those themes and miss that because of the gyrating, but yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you for that question. Yeah, let's go to you.
I was just wondering, and have been wondering for a few years, when 6 years ago it was announced that the sequel to I'm Number 4 was shelved, what was the attitude and the reaction of the cast and crew?
Well, it's the same reaction as I had when Stormbreaker was shelved. You know, I think that Stormbreaker was shelved because Alex Rider stays 15 throughout the books. And I think I'm Number 4 was the first kind of situation where the movie was released at the same time as the book. The book wasn't like a worldwide phenomenon. And so there wasn't really an IP to go off of. There was not an audience. And I think if the movie had made maybe 10 million more, maybe we would be making a sequel. But I really loved the experience of making I'm Number 4, and I would have been very happy to do another one. But yeah, we didn't.
Great, thank you for that question. Does anyone else have a question? Yeah, go to the back.
Hi. As someone who's just started working more like the production side of films, would you have any advice for someone who wants to go into that as a career, like working in production? 'Cause it's
In like what field?
film.
No, I know film. but like in production as in like...
As a producer.
As a producer. I think the greatest thing for me is what I've learned is to align with producers that have been established and experienced. When I did the Godmother, I aligned with obviously Jennifer, but I also aligned with this woman called Julie Oren, and she produced Hell on High Water with Chris Pine and Ben Foster, and she did The Zookeeper and great films. And obviously because I was a novice in that field, I aligned with them. I think as a producer, finding good content, when you have great content, you can really have the door open, and then when the door does open, it's about making sure that you're collectively surrounded by good people and experienced people. Yeah, but it all comes down to what story you want to tell. And I know that I've been, as a producer, gone into rooms and thought that I've had the greatest idea, and the creative side on the other side, like HBO or Showtime or Amazon or any of these, are looking for a completely different thing. So don't be deterred by no's. I've had 1,000 of them. Just keep progressing forward, and the right thing will come at the right time.
Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. Yeah.
Oh no. Oh no.
I wondered if you have any limits to the kind of roles that you would play, or if there's particular roles that you would like to play either.
I think the things for me is just to find things that scare me. Like Tony Curtis what I'm about to do, he has a very distinct voice. He has like a New York, but he has like a hustle to his voice, and I'm okay at imitation. Like I can like impersonate people. I had a business partner. Oh, he's going to hate me, and I'm going to really get him here. So I had a business partner. I did a tech company. It didn't quite work out the way that it was meant to work out, but I was a part of it for a year. And he has a very distinct voice. He talks like this. Says, "All right, guys, you know, my name is X, and you know, with our tech company, we're looking for, like, you know, the real specific algorithms to make sure that everyone in the world is going to collectively come together, and we're really going to. It's just going to be like a little bit of a higgledy-piggledy, really." And then obviously like Christopher Walken, like I can do that and stuff like that. So like, but I never want to do an impersonation. And I think that the thing for me is like, when as an actor, you want to take an essence of someone because you are never going to be that person. And I think things like that scare me, to enter someone else's life, you know, and take on all the things that have happened in their life to really portray that in a reality on screen is hard. You know, when I did Backroads, it's not based on anyone, but a lot of the themes that ran through that movie were very dear to my heart, and it was almost like therapy for me. You know, the movie is like a psychological drama about 4 kids, me being the oldest with 3 younger sisters who have been sexually abused by their father, and their father had been murdered, what you think, by their mother. Their mother is in prison, and it's about myself dealing with the aftermath of those effects. Meanwhile, another murder at the beginning of the film happens, and you're led back 6 weeks before that and trying to figure out who did the other murder. And as you unravel that murder, you unravel the other situations that have happened in the family. And to be a part of that film, as I said, on the sexual abuse and harassment side, I've never been witness or privy to anything like that before. And to dive into people's psyche that have gone through this and have had traumatic experiences, it's horrible, you know. And then also on top of that, to have a human being that is so dark in his life and at the bottom breaking point, you know, to go there as a human being, just from an emotional point of view, was like, I mean, it's hard for me to talk about it because I try not cry, but like it's hard. You have to like really in sync with that person. And so I was also directing the movie, which was a pain in the arse, because normally when I do a movie, I just stay in that kind of energy. And so I had to like come out and also like direct 300 people and be like happy-go-lucky guy, and then go into like this dark world. So when I finished that movie, I had, which I had never had before, I started to get optical migraines, which is like where you would lose vision, just because I was so stressed and so like tied into like a certain mentality. And so I think things that scare me are things that really attract me, and the things that I wouldn't experience in my own life, I want to experience. And that kind of leads back to me and what I said about school is like, I regret leaving school and not learning, but the greatest advantage that I have in my life now is that I can go and learn about things and learn new skill sets that I would never have the opportunity to learn and kind of play around with. And I think that the first part of my career, I've had a great opportunity to learn how to ride motorbikes and fly and pew, 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 and and now I really want to dive into people's lives, you know, and tell people's stories, and really grounded stories that I don't necessarily think that at the moment I've really achieved that, you know. So I think the next, you know, couple of years, that's where I want to go.
Thank you. That is all we have time for.
Perfect.
But please join me in thanking Alex Pettyfer.